So, welcome to Artificial Intelligence, Tool or Trouble. Whenever I first proposed this idea about a year and a half ago, it was already a very complicated subject, and it's only gotten worse since then. I've had to rewrite this lecture from scratch about 4 different times, and just as a little barometer, I even checked with ChatGPT of what do you think about this subject? What should I talk about? And it got about maybe 60% of the stuff that I wanted to hit on, but it didn't really capture the emotional impact of what's going on from the humanities side of this conversation that I want to have today. So with that, I wanted to start off by posing a question. What is the public perception of artificial intelligence? A lot of y'all have probably been exposed to different types of media outlets, information online, newspapers, journals, and other kind of things. Maybe it's colleagues talking about they're afraid of plagiarism and other elements of what's going on that artificial intelligence is influencing. Most of the information that I've been able to find is that people are scared of artificial intelligence because it requires a lot of relinquishment of control, which is something that humanity has been the driving force for various industries throughout just the dawn of civilization. So not being in direct control over all of those kinds of nuancial elements of our society is kind of terrifying. So hopefully today I can demystify a little bit of the stuff that's going on with AI, but it's also one of those things to where we don't really have an end goal. So we'll have to see how far it gets pushed in the various industries that it's influencing. So one of the first things that I typically have to start with for my students is, have we already been using AI? And the answer is yes. If you have been using a computer since the 80s, congratulations, you've adopted artificial intelligence into your workflows. Very simple things like Microsoft Word doing spell check for you is technically an artificial intelligence system helping you become more efficient at what you're trying to accomplish. So with that, artificial intelligence has been a supporting element to technology for decades. And that's where artificial intelligence is actually older than I am. I'm 34, I'll be 35 in June. This idea of artificial intelligence got coined in the 1950s. So this concept isn't new to society, but the problem is the impact is new. That's the big caveat. So this is a rough timeline that goes up to the 2000s of kind of how artificial intelligence has entered into what we call the cultural lexicon, meaning that it's become a common term that people would recognize. Now, that blue squiggly line that you're seeing just kind of doing its own thing is the funding of artificial intelligence in relation to the national amount of spending or investment in just enterprises in general. So we are talking fractions of a percent. Very, very small amount all the way back in the 1950s. But 1950, Can Machines Talk with Alan Turing is one of the trackable moments that artificial intelligence became a part of what we recognize as an element of technology. I'm not going to have time to go into all of these points, but another key moment is 1968 and 1970 with Minsky and Steve Kubrick and Arthur Clarke. They both had predictions about how long would it take for us to have computers that are as smart as people? Now that we are living in the future for them, has that happened yet? No. And we're still quite a ways off from it. But people already were thinking that computers would be able to reach the point of human intelligence. Now, if we go back to the beginning of this with the golden age of science fiction, do we actually have several instances of computer maybe characters or things from media that show them emulating human level intellect? Hmm?
I think I remember there's one thing about this Google company, about this gentleman, I can't remember his name. Lambda?
Yeah. So that kind of inspiration and basis of where they're actually pulling from like ancient Greek for the inspiration of these concepts of higher intellect beings. So this idea has been a part of our society even before computers really became a commonplace element in our culture. So we go further a little bit. Any of y'all remember Deep Blue? It defeated Gary Kasparov in chess. And that was like a huge moment for a lot of people who were just like, oh my God, no, it can beat us at games. Humanity is doomed. But it was one of the first instances where a computer could do something better than a person. And that terrified people, because it had been a supporting role up until this point. And now that we go into the current era, and I want to point out one more thing about that curve, there's a decline going into the 2000s. That was roughly around the time that not only was there a recession, but we hit a problem with AI. We weren't able to develop AI further because we hit a roadblock. And that roadblock was memory. And I don't know about y'all, but I've had to track the price of memory, like RAM and solid state drives and hard disk drives, and they've gotten a lot more affordable now, right? And we even have things like cloud storage where we don't even have to get the hard drives themselves. It's just all stored remotely for us. So that element of memory becoming more affordable was one of the key points that allowed us to accelerate artificial intelligence into what we're experiencing today. So whenever we start talking about AI, there's two different models that we use to kind of categorize what types of AI we have. The first one is reactive machines, and these are the ones that we are the most familiar with. These are the ones that have been enhancing our lives and our workflows for extended periods of time. Me as an animator, there's a process that we call tweening, which means that whenever we need an object to get from point A to point B, we only need to set those 2 points and the computer will fill the in-between spots for us, thereby saving me time. Old school traditional animators that had to hand illustrate had to draw all of those frames in between so that way the motion would be portrayed on screen. So that is a lot of labor and man hours that even these simple processes have simplified for us. And I could go into countless examples of these all day. But that's where we mostly dwelled, and people were okay with it. That wasn't a huge issue. And then we get into the doomsaying element of where are we going from there? And that's the second category, limited memory. It is trained on large volumes of data. You'll sometimes hear a term LLM, or large language model. And that is the difference, is that now it can not only think about a single process and execute on a single process, and then it's done. Now it can remember that process. It can churn through information. It's almost like Kirby. It's insatiable. It's going to continue consuming more and more information and add it into its algorithm so it can create more things. Or if you were a teenager and you were growing up and you were just insatiable in appetite. My grandparents always asked if I had a hollow leg growing up. But that idea of consuming media is where we started to have the problem with AI. So, with that, it gets worse from here. So currently, we are at this point where we are pushing into the theory of mind category, where the AI can discern the needs, emotions, belief, and empathize with what the user wants. It is now trying to interpret our meaning. One of the recent developments that actually just happened with Claude 3 is that they gave it a sample of data and told it to try and pick out and discern a specific thing in that large volume of data, and it was able to find it. It locked onto it. It found the information they wanted, but it also made a second comment, and that's where people are like, uh-oh. I don't know how I want to feel about this, and we have the split in the divide. It said, I feel like I'm being tested. Because we gave it so much junk data, it was just like, this feels like they are trying to test my accuracy. That is a huge milestone that it was actually able to say, I think this is a test. And we're starting to dip our toes into a new world of artificial intelligence that a lot of people aren't ready to kind of comprehend or understand, because whenever AI started to become a big issue in our culture, that was like 5-10 years ago. And it feels like more and more information comes out every single day about what they're doing with the technology. I had 12 different people this week send me information like, hey, did you know about this? Or are you going to talk about this? And things like that. It is a hotbed of information. Yeah. There is a lot of stuff going on with AI, and people are trying to get more information about it. So then the last one that we have is self-aware, which that's the kind of the sci-fi fantasy of it, of we want fully autonomous robots. So like an instance of that would be from like cartoon media with like Rosie from the Jetsons. What were some other popular robot characters? BMO from Adventure Time, if I want to go with something more modern. But they are fully functioning entities that can emulate human experience and emotion. Now, at this point, they're stopping at human, though, right? We're the barometer. The next model takes that a step further. So this is a counterpoint way of people categorizing artificial intelligence. We have ANI, AGI, and ASI. So narrow intelligence was that early form of artificial intelligence that can only do one thing, and then it's done, it's out. It gets rid of all of its memory or what it was trying to process. We're currently in the general intelligence that it can learn, perceive, understand, and function completely like a human being, and they're trying to get better at that. Whether they'll succeed or not, we'll have to see. But they take it a step further that they are talking about super intelligence, which means they're better than us. And I don't know about you, but I'm competitive. I don't like that. So this idea, though, of computers becoming really, really good at the different workflows that we are skilled in is terrifying for a lot of people. And that's where the public perception lies. They don't know how to process what's going on technologically. So why are people nervous? We've talked about one of the big issues, but there's other components that go into this conversation that we have to consider. So lack of knowledge is the #1 reason that a lot of people are so terrified or nervous about AI and how it's going to impact them. And very close at #2 is something that directly impacts us in the workforce, which is jobs. I'm afraid AI is going to come and take my job. Any of y'all have that fear or woe that you're going to be replaced by a computer? It'll be like in Star Wars where the younglings are being taught by like a floating android robot or something like that. Yeah, that idea is terrifying for a lot of people, and various industries are going to be influenced by this. But hopefully I can make you feel a little bit better about it with some of the stuff we'll talk about in a bit. #3 is media. This is my job. We are all about exaggerating things to an extreme degree. So a lot of news outlets and other platforms are going to only give you the best results. So some of y'all that may have seen Sora, which is a video generation platform, or maybe some of y'all have used ChatGPT or other things like that. They are only showing you the cream of the crop whenever they advertise and market these new technologies, because they're trying to instigate a reaction. And media is very good at doing that. We've been doing it for over 100 years. So with that, there's a lot of the human element that is the shock factor of it that we try and prey on. Then we go into security and data risk. Whoo boy, that is a huge topic for this, because I know y'all have probably heard of the term like money laundering, to where we take money from unscrupulous means and then they would try and clean it and diversify it through various like shell companies and stuff. Media portrays this in movies and stuff all the time. But we have another term for this that is related to artificial intelligence, which is called data laundering. Data laundering is the process of taking personal information, using an AI to essentially almost run it through like a washing machine to scrub all the personal information, and then churn it back out as clean information that doesn't have the personal details, but they can use that to get data to feed their other predictive algorithms and stuff like that. So even private information isn't safe in the modern era, because AI can get rid of all the stuff that ties it to you as an individual, and that's where they get into the gray area of the law. We aren't allowed to collect personal data. And this is what sometimes hackers and other people that are trying to get your information are doing with it. So any of y'all ever get that email like, your account may have been hacked, but then nothing happened? It may have been part of that idea of they are laundering the data to where they remove all of your information that makes it particular, but your habits, traits, usage of internet, and things like that are still being fed into an algorithm so they can predict habits. So that is a big topic that needs to be dived into further. And unfortunately, about the only answer to AI right now is AI. We have to fight fire with fire is what it kind of feels like nowadays. So we're almost in like a tech race to protect our information. Then we have the rate of adoption. The next slide will talk more about that. And then we have that fear of relinquishing control that's going to happen as AI begins to reinvent the way that we approach labor. So one of the things that I use to help establish context for my students is how quickly society leaps onto something nowadays. Whenever we had the locomotive, the steam engine, it took almost 100 years for that to become a common form of travel. Now, we needed a lot of infrastructure to make that happen. We had to establish railways, we had to do topography mapping to see where would be the best routes to establish these railways. We had to do a lot of landscaping and maybe drilling through tunnels and things like that to make those. It took a lot to make the technology suit the needs of the public. The counterpart is that in the modern era, the infrastructure, AKA internet and computers, was already there when AI started to explode. And that's why it's such a rapid adoption rate, is it's ready and primed because the technology and infrastructure is ready for it. In contrast, I got a couple of bits from social media. Instagram took 2.5 years to reach 100 million monthly users. That's a lot of people. Yeah, and then TikTok said, hold my beer, we can do one better. They did it in under a year. That's really fast to get that many people into a cultural element or phenomenon online. And then we have things like ChatGPT that are doing that even faster. In 2 months, they were able to reach similar numbers. And I don't know about you, but 5 years ago, I thought social media was going at a fast pace. We are reaching a point to where critical mass of user data is happening in like the time it could take you to complete a job search. It's ridiculous how fast this technology is evolving. And then the reason that it's also expediting or exploding in how it's reaching the public is that funding for it has increased to an astronomical degree. So you remember whenever I said we were at a fraction of a percent when we were talking about global funding for AI pre-2000s? We're in the solid percentiles now. In 2010, we were at 500 million. Okay, that's a pretty healthy number for startups to get beginning with. And then in 2016, just 6 years later, it goes up to $4.2 billion. That is a huge boom for the tech industry. Those of y'all that are versed in the tech industry now, you may know that things aren't doing too hot in the job market for tech right now. We'll talk about that in just a second. But in 2023, so last year, we went up to 25 billion. 18% of our global funding is going to AI and AI startups. There is an insane amount of money being churned into this engine. And it's not going to slow down, unfortunately. There is a lot of information development tools, resources, and things like that available now that make people better at what they're trying to achieve. And so those are the two hallmarks of AI that businesses are using to promote, push, and drive AI development. The age-old first one is profit. And then the second one is productivity, which indirectly loops back into profit, right? Yeah. So these ideas is what's going to influence the workforce. In the next 10 years, we're going to see a $7 trillion boost, hopefully, to the global GDP. That's a lot of extra money on a global scale that AI could potentially cause to be a boost in industry. Now, I don't know about you, but larger numbers when it comes to money would typically lead to more jobs and opportunity, right? Not necessarily, yeah. Thank you for that. So I was really hoping that we would have somebody say that. It doesn't always translate into jobs or opportunity. And that's where the economics of this gets really finicky. But the potential for profit is one of the reasons that businesses are chasing this with reckless abandon almost. And then it can also increase productivity growth of industry by 1.5%. So this is more closely related to that idea of it can create more jobs. Hopefully, we'll see. But the idea of being more productive or increasing the amount of things that we can produce as a society is going to be churning that engine. So all of these things sound good, right? Historically, technology has increased the profitability and how businesses conduct their business. So from a business standpoint, if you are like a business owner, this type of tool and resource is almost always historically a boon. The problem is that the workforce suffers from it. So there is almost always a lull whenever a new technology influences the workforce, and then places like education, like here at Lone Star College-Kingwood, we then have to figure out how do we get people ready for that job market or that role or that opportunity? How do we get them upskilled, if you're looking for a new buzzword to add to your resume? How do you upskill your employees or students to be ready for what the new market is trying to get to? So I had one of my students just like, why did you call it doom metrics? These are the things that all of the people that are extremely afraid of AI are saying, and I was just like, don't worry about it, it's not as bad as you think. It's not the apocalypse, it's just Armageddon. Again. I grew up, I remember hearing all sorts of things about like Y2K and other like doom scenarios. The Mayan calendar is ending and stuff like that. If I had a little bit of money from every time I've heard about these doom and gloom scenarios, I still probably wouldn't be able to afford a house in the current market, but I would at least be a little bit better well off. But around 2/3 of the US occupation are vulnerable to AI displacement. And whenever people hear that, they're just like, oh no. Displacement is a very specific term. I am not trying to say that it is going to take your job or you will lose your job. It means that your job will be impacted. It will be augmented in some way, shape, or form. By 2025, they're projecting 85 million jobs across the globe could be displaced, meaning that they will be impacted in some way, shape, or form. This is why I also chose that word Armageddon. We are in for a big change, a big shift, a big battle of how our industries operate, not only in the creative sector, but in every sector of business. About the only kind of jobs that aren't going to be impacted by AI are things that are extremely practical or physically oriented. So like, you could say something like, you know, the people that come around and help pick up your trash every week from your house. AI is not really going to be directly impacting them, but the people that run the business or plan the route might use it to figure out more efficient ways that they could get that job done. So these kinds of ideas are going to be what will influence the future of our industries. And then tech companies have been systematically laying off employees over the last several years, more than 30,000 this year alone. 2023 was one of the highest years that tech companies had laid off employees. Now we're coming off of a bubble where tech companies exploded over COVID because everybody relied on it. I remember I had to very quickly adopt all of my classes to be either on Zoom or WebEx or some online option or things like that. So we almost were shackled to tech companies and the services that they provided. Now we're kind of getting a little bit more free reign, and that bubble is bursting as people are downsizing, and I like to call this, they're trying to make their businesses more lean, because now we don't need as much of that stuff to do the jobs that we typically would perform. So tech companies are kind of running for the hills, and they're downsizing their businesses because this next generation of tech company is going to have AI integrated into it, and they want to make sure that they have the staffing and the funding to get ready for it. So, now I feel like I've said a lot of negative things up until this point. So, let's talk about something that's a little bit better. So, now we have the counter argument. Every technological innovation creates a lull, but eventually leads to more job opportunities. In 80 years, over half the workforce was invented as a new job of what we have currently today. Can y'all imagine that? Any of y'all ever been in that situation where you have to explain your job to your grandparents and they're just like, I have no idea what you're talking about? It's because over half of the jobs that we have today didn't exist when they were entering the workforce. That is a huge metric, and AI is going to probably cause that number to keep going up. There is literally a job position where you can be paid to just generate queries for AI. That's your job.
Queries,
Yeah.
just like ask questions?
Yeah, just ask questions and formulate it in the way it understands. It is not long for this world as a job, but that is currently a job position because AI is getting better at interpreting just everyday human speech. But that is a brand new job role that tries to utilize this technology and optimize it for business. So new jobs are going to be coming around the horizon, and as an educator, I'm trying to stay on top of it so I can plan for these new workflows and opportunities for the students that come through my program. I can only do so much because I'm human. There's a lot of information to churn through, but that's something that we have to plan for. The idea of what we consider as work and labor is going to be changed over the next decade. How we approach the industry and what we consider as valuable or hireable hard and soft skills are going to be remapped and reinvented in this new era. And then the final metric, this one makes people feel a lot better whenever I mentioned it to them. AI innovation could lead to approximately 97 million new jobs, which is about 10 million more than what we said we would lose, or be at least displaced. So with that, there is a lot of opportunity for this to really ramp up a new engine or a new era of technological innovation. And one of the things I've been hearing this term batted around, it hasn't been officially coined. So if they go with something different in the history books, I'm sorry. But we're entering into an era that a lot of people are trying to call the productivity revolution. We haven't really seen a lot of brand new technologies because a lot of them have leapfrogged off of existing technologies. So you could even say the internet and social media are subsidiaries of just the original invention of the computer. We're still following that daisy chain of evolution of these technological creations. So now we are in an era to where we are getting more effective, efficient, or better at using the technology around us. I don't know about you, but if I had to animate in the 70s, I would have probably pulled my hair out. There was a lot of manual tedium that had to go into it to create those kinds of projects. But now in the digital era, I can create a similar style project in a fraction of the time by myself. The efficiency and productivity ratios of what our job industries are able to create are insanely at a higher rate for what we're trying to make nowadays. So these tools are there to make us better at what we do, and that's me personally, where I feel artificial intelligence will fit snugly into our industries. It should be there to supplement and make us better at what we already do, not replace us. And hopefully it'll go that direction. We'll have to see because we're still in the infancy of AI. So how do you survive the lull of AI? Because right now we're in a bit of a downslope. I know a lot of people have talked like it's hard to find jobs. I don't know how to engage with clients. Networking opportunities are hard to come by because a lot of stuff has moved online. So generally, whenever there is a little bit of a recession, for those of y'all that are my students or students in here, congratulations, you're already doing it. Most of the time, whenever a recession hits, people turn to education so they can become better and more marketable. So with that, we have a couple of other things that we can plan for. Higher skilled or versatile, we are calling these generalists, are more lucrative to a business. So either you have to be extremely skilled at your discipline and you are like an iceberg, a diamond in the rough, or you are a generalist that can perform multiple job roles. Those are the two primary ways that a business is going to evaluate your value to the company. Now, whenever I first started in this industry, I was an editor. I only edited. I cut footage. I didn't do anything else. That was my job. And then somebody quit and they needed a camera operator. Do you know how to operate a camera? Yeah, I get around. So then they trained me on the camera, and now I started recording field interviews and presentations and stuff like that for the TV station. And then that eventually led into, do you know how to conduct interviews? Do you know how to cut commercials? Do you know how to do motion graphics? It expanded over time. And then I eventually became an educator, so now my skill set had to permeate and evolve again, and I have become what I call a lifelong learner. Just literally yesterday, I had one of my past clients and also a student of this campus reach out to me and go, hey, can you show me how to use this new program or this tool or resource? And we sat down for an hour and we logicked it out together, because he has clients lined up that want him to use this new tool. I had never used it before, but because of my logic of technology and using these different resources, we were able to figure it out and how we could turn out a usable product that companies would pay money for. That is where the generalist mentality is probably going to be one of the thriving elements of every creative industry moving forward. And I cannot understate that in any way. That is what a lot of businesses are looking for. If you can wear multiple hats and still look good doing it, you're going to be very lucrative in the modern market. So, I know probably a lot of my colleagues in here are just like, yeah, our job responsibilities have increased quite a bit lately. They want us to do a lot of different things. But that's where the industries are heading because AI is making us better at what we do. Training tests have shown that text-based workflows, such as press releases, reports, emails, script writing, things like that, for lower skilled, so let's say entry to journeyman level employees, we are seeing about an 18% increase in quality. That sounds nice. I could get 20% better at my job just by using AI to help. That sounds pretty good. And even better, these employees are 40% faster at their jobs. Now, I don't know about you, but let's say I work an 8-hour day. I don't, I work more, but we'll say for concept that I was working 8 hours a day. If I was 40% faster, that would save me hours of time a day, which I don't know about you. In the modern era, I always feel like I have less and less time to get things done. So being able to reclaim some of that time sounds great. So do you think businesses are going to say, oh, cool, you finished for the day, you can go home and we'll still pay you your normal rate? No, unfortunately. It'd be really nice though. 6-hour workdays, that's quite a fallacy. But that idea of being more productive means that the business can take more clients, more work, get more things done. Or if I was a freelancer, I could turn projects around even faster. So a week gig, so 5 days, could maybe come down to like 3 or 4 days. And then I could maybe take an additional client or something like that. So that idea of productivity even applies to higher skilled employees. So they didn't notice an extensive upgrade in quality for their highly skilled employees, but the level of productivity was similar. So could you imagine if you were a business owner and you were presented this idea of, what if your entire workforce was 40% faster at what they do? Yeah, More money, exactly. Like, ooh, yeah, we can do something with that. So this is one of the reasons why business is driving AI development, because this is just for text-based industries. For very labor-intensive industries like animation, that number is sometimes higher for the time saved. I have seen numbers almost as high as 120% for some industries of making them more efficient at what they do. And part of it is because of what I'm calling AI chains, which means that we have multiple AIs that are optimized for different things that we feed into each other. So we almost create a daisy chain of content creation or optimization for different workflows. So this idea is going to be what will re-energize and reinvent how we approach work. It's kind of baffling, the kind of stuff that we have available nowadays. Excuse me. So with that, we have a couple problems with AI. And if you go onto social media, you'll start seeing a lot of these general use cases, and people are just like, it's not quite ready for prime time yet. But they are continuing to refine it every day. So most generative AI models nowadays can only do one thing at a time. Make me a video with this criteria. Write me a lecture or a presentation. Write my master's thesis. It's a lot of different scenarios that you could try and feed into it, but it can only do that one thing. And typically it's optimized for that one thing. So ChatGPT, great for doing text-based stuff. Things like Midjourney can only create images. Things like Sora can only create video. They are only able to work with one specific thing at a time. We aren't able to really laterally stitch multimedia together. So those of y'all that are in these creative industries, and y'all have probably heard that term, multimedia, you know exactly what I'm talking about, is because most projects nowadays are a collage or a collaboration between various elements, to where we would need a bit of graphic design, a bit of video, a bit of audio, or things like that to mix together into a final product. So with that, we're not at the doom scenario yet. Doesn't factor in ethics, empathy, or humanities. That is a big one. Some of y'all may have seen different scenarios online where different AI models would start talking to each other and the end results were not pleasant. And I will just leave it at that. But AI is not really able to consider some of the more fringe elements of what we define as elements of humanity. Things that where we may take different stances based off of our personal experiences and biases, or how we feel, how we emote about things and stuff like that. It isn't really good at interpreting those subjective values because it is primarily processing information that it is determining as fact. Sometimes it's not able to quite process the information accurately either sometimes too. But this idea of it not able to relate to us in a personal experience is probably going to be the hardest hurdle that we're going to have to overcome if AI is going to become as good as people. And then we'll probably end up, if y'all are familiar with media, we'll get like Connor from Cyberlife with Detroit Become Human, or other kind of characters in media. So next, it relies on volume of fact, overriding false or incorrect information. You remember whenever I said that it takes a ton of information and consumes and collects it? There's two big elements to this that you have to consider. And this is how people are actually fighting back, is one of these. Once it consumes, it can't get rid of it. Meaning that anything that's fed into this large language model or deep learning is stuck permanently. Because how much data are we talking about? Thousands, millions, billions of, trillions of files and data. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be the person that would have to sort through all of that, especially with online file names nowadays. Trying to find all that stuff would be terrible, and we would have to try and remove or isolate that information. So with that idea though, a human would have to go into the trillions of files that make this AI content and try and remove it manually, which isn't going to happen. because it could be called any sort of computer gobbledygook as a file name. So once it learns, it can't unlearn. And that's how people are actually fighting back. There's one element that artists have a huge issue with, and that is the element of copyright. That's going to be a slide will come up, but there is a component that people are using to protect their digital assets and art called Project Nightshade. Essentially, think of it as hiding inhospitable AI data as part of your file. So once it consumes, it misinterprets the information. So the way that it was described to me was, let's say you have an image of a cow, and it's like the best cow ever. You are getting paid by clients to make this, and it will be a big part of your profitability in the future, but you're worried AI is going to take it. So what Nightshade is going to do is it's going to trick the computer into thinking that that cow is a handbag. So whenever it starts generating images of cows, and it's going to pull your data, it might add a strap from like a lady's purse or something like that. And then people are just gonna be like, what is going on with this AI model? And if enough data clogs the engine, the fact that it can't unlearn is a problem. Now, I know I'm running a little bit out of time, so I'm gonna speed up a couple of things, and I can talk more afterwards. I want to talk about AI and copyright because these ideas are what's going to be the big element of litigation moving forward. In United States law and all of the countries that respect copyright, there is nothing in it that protects ideas and stylization. But does it protect the actual artwork itself? Yes. So, the fact that all of these AI companies have taken tons of imagery online to train their model, artists that say they're stealing my style, how I make myself unique, doesn't hold in court. That's a big problem. The thing that makes us unique and distinct as an artist is not protectable in the way that the current laws are written. And then we also have the counterpoint of fair use. All of these AI companies have already gone into court and said, yeah, we committed copyright infringement, but it's transformative fair use because it's now generating a new image based off all these old images. So now we're in legal limbo because courts are just like, I don't know what to do with this. This is a new territory that no previous legislation has had to address, which means we're going to need new laws to redefine what is and isn't permissible. But until then, it's the Wild West. There are no real regulations that they can impose because this didn't exist before. And unfortunately, it's probably going to take about 10 years for that to happen, so it's going to get chaotic. So sorry, we're in for a bit of a bumpy ride as a creative. The Copyright Office has said, and this is a quote directly from them, if a work's traditional elements of authorship were produced by a machine, the work lacks human authorship and the office will not register it. So that means we won, right? Unfortunately, no. Because a lot of media, do you really need to own it for an extended period of time, especially with the internet? That's a big problem. Because let's say a business wants to make a logo. Yeah, they're going to have to make sure that they can copyright, trademark, and enforce that to represent their business. So logo making is fine. But let's say I need to just make a flyer for an event that's going to happen once. Does it really matter if I use a lot of AI-generated content because it's just going to be something that will exist for a moment in time and then not be relevant? That's the interpretation that some businesses have. And that's why they're using these AI-generated tools. And to make it worse, we could already kind of argue that we were doing that to ourselves with stock imagery and stock videography and stuff like that. We were already creating the database for AI before it existed. So it's almost like by making our lives more efficient, we created something by proxy unintentionally that's going to make our lives harder. And that's where a lot of people are worried about how AI is going to affect them. So until we get new legislation, we're kind of in limbo. Now, I just want to touch on a couple of quick things, and then I'll open up for Q&A. So, is AI creating art bad for creatives as a whole? It really depends on your interpretation of what it means to be creative. So let's take an example like Studio Ghibli. They are a very prominent international animation company, and they have a very particular style that their movies emulate. So with that, there's a bunch of people that were just like, ooh, I love that style. I'm going to practice it. Isn't that actually kind of what AI is doing? Is it's emulating human success? Yeah. So with that though, is it having to put in all the labor, effort, love, sweat, tears, and stuff that they had to do to get to that point to where they could maybe work at Studio Ghibli? No. And that's where people are getting upset about it. People have historically emulated success, and the progression of ideas and the fact that they cannot be regulated makes it hard for us to limit what we can and can't do with different types of media. It's like how Super Mario Brothers initially had the idea of being able to run and jump on enemies, but then Mega Man was a run and jump game, but they also added shooting. They took that original idea and improved upon it, or made it take it further. This is where we're at nowadays, to where artificial intelligence is generating content that allows us to iterate in a way that we've never had the pace of before. So now, let's say I wanted to do a design for a firm. I could use generative AI as a concept or mood board to get inspiration about what kind of stuff I can maybe take my direction with, and very quickly flesh out those ideas. And then I could use those for thumbnails and sketches to take that even further, but then I make it my own, because now I'm going to create it. That is the ethical way of using it, and that's the way I hope artists are using it. But those of y'all that are familiar with online media know that some artists are passing off final product as their work and creations. The Copyright Office has actually ruled that if you use AI to fully create something, you are supposed to demark it in some way, shape, or form that it was made either partially or fully with AI. But not everybody's going to do that. So that's where we're kind of in that Wild West territory of, can we believe something? It gets even worse with other kind of technology. So EMO or Emo AI is able to take a portrait of any image and make it lip sync to any kind of audio that you feed it. So now you can make just about anybody say anything. And it looks photorealistic. That's a problem. So it may end up being a point to where we couldn't even allow video evidence in court or audio evidence in court because it could be synthetically created. There are major repercussions to the technology and the tools that we are about to create, and a lot of industries are not prepared to adapt and accommodate them. But it does allow us as content creators to be able to more quickly create different things. So let's say, for example, I have my video or digital video class and my advanced digital video class. Because of the innovations in technology and the workflows that have evolved, because these new technologies have increased the productivity of my students, whenever I first started teaching, all of the material that I covered in digital video through advanced digital video, we are now able to finish in just the first class alone, which gives me a whole extra semester of content that I can train and teach my students. And they're doing it at a competent level to where they are hireable, which is insane. In 16 weeks, I'm getting them ready for a particular job workflow, which is fascinating to me because it used to take double the time. So this idea of upskilling and making your students or workforce more talented at what they do is what I hope is the driving force of AI, not instigating the replacement of them or the downsizing of those job roles. How does AI systems affect our physical world? One of the biggest byproducts of computers is heat. I do not have time to go into the whole global warming debate, but one of the biggest components of this is the energy grid. the rate at which we are using electricity, not only from like electric cars, but also integrating more digital technologies and all the processing power these AI tools need, we are only prepared to fuel these different technologies with fossil fuels, because other alternative energy workflows aren't able to scale with the level or the rapidity that AI is going to demand. So with that, that may have other global economic repercussions on our environment. So that's another aspect of this that we have to analyze. And then the productivity revolution is, again, that idea of we are going to be more efficient as a society at the different job roles and job titles that we have. So if you don't embrace that idea, or at least consider ways that you can adapt and be a lifelong learner to improve as an individual, unfortunately, that may end up leaving you left behind the digital tech curve of what the new generation of students may be familiar with. It's kind of like whenever I was going through grade school and stuff like that, I was in the middle of the hotbed of the TI-83 debate of whether you're allowed to use that for math class. And I was just, as a student, I was just like, oh, this is cool. I can actually use this and it helps me figure out these things. It was a resource to me. But to my teachers and professors, they were just like, no, this is terrible. You have to know how to do it from scratch because technology might not always be available or around for you to use. And now I have the wealth of the internet's knowledge in my pocket at all times. So there's always going to be the contrast between the people that are extremely, I'm going to say, allergic to the idea of AI reinventing the way we approach work. And then there's always going to be the counter side of people that want to push this well beyond what would be the ethical margins of what we should do with the technology. But at the end of the day, AI is a tool, a resource that we as an individual and as a collective society will have to determine the value and the use cases for. And since we are at the forefront of this technology, I hope that you approach it with an open mind of how it can enhance you as an individual and make you better at the things that you want to achieve. But if you are a person that wants to stay away from this kind of technology and not use it or integrate it into your workflows, you're going to have to become very clever about how you market and advertise yourself, because I can guarantee you there will be a niche. I mean, the Amish are still around, and they want to completely forego technology. But that idea of being AI independent is actually a marketable element because there are people that don't want to utilize it. So you're going to have to try and reach those people in this new world that we're going to be marching forward into. So with that, thank you so much for attending my talk today. I will open it up for question and answer, or if you want to stick around a little bit and talk a bit more. But again, thank you for attending today. I hope you enjoyed this presentation.